Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the golden age of British children's literature, which was sort of really between 1820 and 1920, or some say 1830 and 1930, but it was considered to be a golden age and probably a new age, I guess, of literature and writing style, and it was kicked off by the likes of Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland, but also going into the 1950s, Arthur Ransom and Swallows and Amazons, Winnie the Poo, excuse me, The Wind in the Willows, Kenneth Grahame, and so on. So there were quite a few of these children's stories that actually sort of bridged, Peter Pan, that sort of really also became classics because adults were reading them, and they're still classics today, and they've been translated into goodness knows how many languages, and again they're still on the bookshelves 100 years or more than 100 years after they were written. And Alice in Wonderland is probably one of the better known stories, and it's been made into countless movies and TV miniseries and so on. So I saw a documentary that was made about this classical golden age of British children's literature, and it was made in the 1960s, early 1960s, like 1961, 62, I think. And they stuck very much, as was to facts in the time, and they stuck to very much couched in reality, of course, as it was then, and also the appreciation of the writing. Now, the author was one thing, and the author's life that they led was but really the writing was why was the book, many decades after it's written, or the story was still being bought, still being appreciated, loved and admired by children and readers everywhere in multiple languages and the like. So it's a great story and it's great writing. Now, it may not be to everyone's taste, but anything that survives the test of time like that's got to have something going for it. Now, I remember as a kid, at school, in a school that was taught in English, that you had those classics. So as a kid, I remember, even if the school didn't cover it, I'd get these books supplied to me by my grandparents, for example. So I read Wind in the Willows and Alice in Wonderland, Swallows and Amazons. And I didn't actually take to Winnie the Pooh too much. In Wonderland, Swallows and Amazons, I didn't actually take to Winnie the Pooh too much. I thought it seemed rather silly, but nonetheless. So I had all these stories around me as a kid growing up, and I variously liked some and didn't like others, and reread Alice in Wonderland a number of times, missing the poignancy of the moral story. For example, the walrus and the carpenter talking to Alice about eating the oysters and these sorts of things. But it was the way Lewis Carroll, or what was his? I can't remember his real name now. Dodson, was it? The way he brought these things to life in this Wonderland. And I think even today, looking at the writing and the way he was able to put rhymes and little sort of poems in the thing, I think it's fantastic writing. Irrespective, the 1960s version stuck to the writing and an appreciation of the writing and how it was put together, and there were various professors of English and professors of literature and so on that would opine about how wonderful it was, and just give quite a technical, I suppose, appreciation of how it was structured and put together, and why it was so well received and so successful and so universally received as well. Outside of outside of England, it was Alice in Wonderland, for example, was read in places all over the world. So now coming to today, though, or a recent documentary, there's mention of appreciation of the writing, but really not much. They've turned it into a socio-political hit piece, in effect, and it's problematic because the writers are all male and white and middle class, so it's problematic that they're white and male. Now, let's have a look at the time that most of these people were. In fact, nearly all of them were. Yeah, all of them were writing. The non-white population of Britain was, wouldn't even have been half of 1%, less than that. And so they're writing for an audience. Now, they've got no idea it's going to go international when they're writing the story, or even that it's going to be successful in the British Isles as a story. So I think it was Alice in Wonderland was written sometime around the 1840s, I think, around there. And so it's done by a college professor, and he's writing about, or actually it's a story he's created for one of his relatives. I think it's his niece, and she's a young girl. She's 10 or less than 10. And so they're one nice summer's day. They've got a little boat that they're going down the Thames, and he's telling her stories. And so the beginnings of what became Alice in Wonderland was him telling these silly stories to entertain his niece. And so he invented a wonderland and the characters within it. So now he's white and his family's white. Everyone around him is white because that's it. It's Britain, remember. It's not Africa. We're not saying to Shaka Zulu, well, gee, it's a real problem. You're black and everyone was black and everyone's black and all your people there are black and all your soldiers are black. That's problematic. In fact, it's problematic, Shaka Zulu, that you're fucking black. No, that's not happening. Why is it problematic then that the white people in a white country are white? It's absurd to claim that it's problematic. So they hit it straight away. It's a hit piece from the get-go. So they're evil for being middle class, they're evil for being white, they're evil for being male. And in the event they're Christian, evil again. And if they're straight, evil on top of that. So it's 5 evil goes there. And then they're writing a book which makes another for a white audience, which makes it also evil. Do they appreciate the literature? Writing a book which makes another for a white audience, which makes it also evil. Do they appreciate the literature? There's passing appreciation of it. I wouldn't call it that, but even the appreciation is bound up within the current woke discourse that's being forced and pushed. We've been beat over the head with every day. So now I think it's 9 commentators. There are 5 women and 2 gay men, 2 very old straight men who are obviously in failing health, and that's it. It's only the 2 old men, and they're all meant to be, literary commentators of one sort or another. It's only the 2 older men that stick the most to the. Now there's a black or two non-white commentators there, and they don't appreciate the literature at all. For example, one of them says, "Well, I'm reading the story, but I can't identify with it because none of the characters are black." This is a story written in 1840s England. Why would the characters be black? Why? Is there a reason? Why is Shaka Zulu not white? Why? Ask that question. But it's she's allowed to present her activist position and assert it as if it's somehow fact. It's true. There is something inherently evil that in a white country, white people writing for a white audience are white. It's fucking Hitler. So So it's presented that I can't identify with. I'm black, and I've come to this. I've chosen to come to this white country, and your historical literature going back for centuries features white people in a white country in a white society, which means I can't identify with it, says the black woman, and therefore it's even that all has to go. It all has to go. And anything that was written before black people came to Britain, all must go or must be rewritten. So black people can feel like they're part of the community. Well, you're not part of the community. And why? And if you, why have you chosen to come to Britain? If the minute you get there, you complain about that there's too many white people, or that the white history has white people in the white history. Why don't you complain about black people having, there's black people in African black history? Why don't you complain about that? Or Chinese people in Chinese history, or Japanese people in Japanese history? Of course, there's fucking white people in a white country in white history. I mean, what else would there be? But this is presented like this is a real problem. This is a real problem. And it just demonstrates that fucking Hitler is writing all these things. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, you stupid fucking moron. So I can't identify with these stories, and because I can't identify with the stories, says the black activist, all the stories must be changed, all the white people must be removed, so I can feel like part of it. So unless Alice is changed into being a black lesbian, I can't identify with it, says the black lesbian. So also all the literature is presented as being flawed because there are no black characters in it. Or flawed because it's written by white middle class men. Now there are some stories, Beatrix Potter as an example, that are written by white women, but this is presented as problematic because some of the white women are white, and they're Christians, so that's a double negative there. So that can't be allowed. Then in one case, they strangled some story out of it that her husband was really an oppressor, an evil Nazi oppressor. And really the story that she wrote is a story about the oppression she suffered at the hands of this evil Nazi Hitler. And really, so they even try to weave woke into that. So any sort of strangled interpretation, so you come away from this documentary not appreciating literature, but believing it was some massive white supremacist Nazi plot going back to the 1840s, but believing it was some massive white supremacist Nazi plot going back to the 1840s. Going back to the 1840s, that was deliberately designed to not include, black people or whatever. Now, on top of this, they bring in, 1840 was a time when Britain had quite a considerable empire, colonial empire. Therefore, this is proof that these people that were writing were really colonialists or pro-colonialists. If they were pro-colonialists, that means they were white supremacists. White supremacists means they were fucking Hitler, which is really all the justification you need for taking all these white characters out of it and replacing them with black lesbians. I mean, there you go. You've got your moral justification right there. So there wasn't any, and it was incredible to see the difference between the 1960s take on these things, which was, again, an appreciation of literature, but how today they're using, let's pretend that let's say that we're appreciating the literature, but then use this as a launching pad to go into a woke denunciation of white male Christians. Let's use it for that. But let's not tell people we're doing that. We'll pretend it's a depreciation of literature, but we'll use it as a full-on assault, not on white society, not only on white society, but white history, white literature, white books, the white writers, the guy, Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland, all this sort of stuff. Let's attack them all for what we presume, or what we will assert they believed in, what we will assert they represented, what we will assert they symbolized. And it's all evil, all bad. All of it is bad. None of it is good. And it all has to change because we live in a different world now, and we have to change the past to represent the artificial, imposed, non-organic future that nobody wanted anyway. And fuck. So I was sorely disappointed. It was funded by the usual globalist activist hack type organisations. And if you do the backtracking through because money is given to front company A that got money from another front company from another front company, and if you're prepared to spend, it doesn't take long, actually, a few minutes online, you'll find that if there's a very generous grant that came from the United Nations to the people that do the documentary and so on. So a lot of activism and a lot of race hustling and race grifting and so on. Going on, but the main purpose of the thing wasn't to appreciate the literature or anything like that, but was to portray all the writers as deeply flawed and maybe tortured souls in some cases, but deeply flawed. But more importantly, they were evil because they were white, male, and fucking Christian, and that makes them evil. Nothing more to discuss here. And if they're evil, then the material they produced, the stories that they wrote, must therefore also be evil. But how can we make it non-evil? By changing all the characters into black lesbians, of course. There you go. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.